Hi, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. I raise two types of ducks here on my farm. The khaki campbells are great for eggs and my muscovies also produce eggs and ducklings, and I harvest some of these birds for meat. In today's video we're going to explore my world of ducks, housing, bedding, benefits of the ducks to my permaculture system, the types of ducks and why I have both. I'll give just a glimpse of the harvest process as well as preparation of delicious food including roast duck, broth and duck liver pate. The ducks' day starts when I head down to the dam to let them out. The khaki campbells are quickly out onto the water while the muscovies like to greet each other and welcome in the new day together. One thing I love about ducks is that they are great foragers and spend a lot of the day wandering the paddocks and digging up worms or finding frogs to enjoy. They don't exactly follow my grazing herd around, but they do seem to enjoy it when some manure has been left behind. I'm sure they help reduce pest numbers here and in my swales. They are often foraging amongst my trees and plants in the food forest, hopefully finding the problem pests to keep their numbers down while leaving behind a good dose of fertility. Talking about fertility, they produce lots of it and a heap at night in their housing. This house is particularly hard to clean out and I have to tip it over to dig all the bedding out. Freshen up the hay bedding very regularly to keep the odour down and flies at bay. Every so often I do get in for the big clean out. A house in which you could stand up would help with the whole clean-up process, and it would also be easier to catch a duck at harvest time. With a large enclosed outside area attached to the house, it would mean I could go away and have neighbours feed and check the birds. And the helpers wouldn't have non-compliant ducks on their hands to worry about. I have plans to convert my backyard chicken coop to duck housing, just not sure when that will happen. And I'll just top this one up with some hay. And that one's all good now too. But I'm also rewarded with the duck bedding that heads off to my front garden. Last time I cleaned out the bedding, I added it around my garlic. And as for this lot, I think it's heading to my corn bed, but I'll be doing that another day. I have 3 khaki campbells and they're all ducks. I have no drakes. The last drake was taken by a fox, unfortunately. And they are really great layers. Once they start laying for the season, they just keep laying up until late autumn, and they're not that fussed if you collect their eggs. I've shown gathering eggs in my preserving eggs video, and I'll leave a link to that. Today's eggs are going to go towards a frittata that I show in a video called Breakfast from the Farm, so be sure to check that one out too. Now, sometimes you forget that you haven't collected the eggs for a little while. There's quite a few in here. It is best to collect the eggs on a daily basis and not forget them. But it has been cool lately, so I'm not too worried. They'll be perfect in my frittata. My Muscovy ducks lay plenty of eggs, but they're not as good as the khaki campbells. Once I start gathering their eggs, they start to hide them in different places. And you have to go on a bit of a hunt to find them. And once you find them, they'll go and hide them somewhere else. So eventually it's just best to let them sit on some eggs, hatch out some ducklings so that they remain safe and don't go sitting on a nest where predators can get them. At the start of the year I had 2 ducks, one in each house, sitting on eggs, and they hatched out about 18 ducklings between them. It's always exciting to have these little ducklings arrive, and even more exciting when they hit the big world and get to swim around with Mum out on the dam. The only problem with lots of ducklings is that they grow big and outgrow the accommodation. I find it difficult to move ducks to different housing once they are older. They just don't go in. So some do get left out at night. That's when the harvest begins. It seems a shame to leave them all for the fox to enjoy. I have managed to harvest about 9 ducks this year, which puts meat in the freezer, bone broth in the pantry and delicious duck fat in the fridge. Recently I had my nephew Trent here to help process 2 ducks, which enabled me to film just a little bit to share with you. You just have to scald ducks for around 2 minutes at 68 degrees, and you really got to vigorously pull them up and down because they've got 2 layers of feathers. The first minute is actually just wetting the sort of the downy feathers that are right next to their skin, and then the second minute is the actual scalding, which is allowing the feathers to be loosened. Now it's good to get the feet in and under as well because they will peel in the process, and then they're perfect for using in your stocks and that sort of thing, and the delicious duck broth. Towards the end of your 2 minutes, you can sort of start to test some of the feathers, like the tail feathers or the wing feathers, make sure that they're coming out. But you don't want to overdo scalding because you can sort of cook the skin, so it's not so great. Yeah, we got 5 seconds. Okay, and hopefully this plucker works. This is the first time I've used the plucker for ducks. They usually do the chickens really well, or the roosters, but not so sure about these ducks. This scalder usually gets chickens and roosters done perfectly with all their feathers gone, but we've had this bird in for quite some time. And this is as good as it seems to get, just a different shape, I reckon, of the bird. So we're going to be plucking some of it, but at least half's done. The plucker I've got is one that I got for plucking meat birds, and it does a really good job of that. And this is the first time I've used it on ducks. Now, it has removed skin in some spot. The duck doesn't seem to get flown around like the chicken does. It's just a different shape. And if we'd left this bird in any longer, you just risk damaging more of the skin, which I don't want to do. I'll be investigating pluckers that are designed more for ducks and seeing if I can kind of make one or source one of those. Well, the ducks are plucked now. As much as we can get off all the little fine feathers, that's as much as I'm going to do. What I do now is put them in the refrigerator overnight and then finish off with the gutting tomorrow. And that allows any of the fat to solidify because the duck fat is like gold and you don't want to waste any. So I'm just going to pop that in the refrigerator and come back again tomorrow. Okay, it's the next day and time to finish processing these 2 ducks. They're pretty well plucked, so I don't have to do too much with that, but I will just tidy up any loose little bits of feather, but not worry about it too much. But we're going to get these girls processed. Okay, so the first thing is to remove the feet, and I make a stock with those. So I've got a bowl for any of the duck that I will make stock with, which also includes the head. So I can get that off of there. Now, if you're processing your own ducks and not sure what to do, there are some great videos, including from Brand and Sheard. So I'll leave a link to that. Now, this neck I will use for stock, so I'll be removing that. Now, this little tube, which is the neck, you can actually make a sausage out of that. Okay, so let's get into the innards of this bird. I just cut very carefully. Again, watch a proper video. Now that's the liver just there, which I will be keeping because I do want to make some pate. I have mashed the liver up a bit there. And I also get in here and get out the giblets and the heart. So that's the heart, which I will be keeping. And the giblets I usually feed to my dogs, but I'll try and get off all that beautiful fat from around it. And you just kind of work the viscera inside until you can pop out all these contents. Now we just kind of find that bone there, and here we're trying to get out the stomach contents without piercing anything. So we can get in next to the bone under here, kind of go right through there. And cut around it so we don't pierce anything. And there we go. That's all the insides of our lovely duck. And I'll be just taking all of this up to the compost. And now we just need to give that a really good rinse out. And that's our first duck done. I'll be halving that and roasting the two sides together in a confit manner. But I'll show you what I do with that. And we just repeat the process. Now I've decided with this bird I'm going to roast it in 2 halves. So I'm just going to halve the bird. I find a pair of these kitchen scissors really invaluable for kind of helping get through bony bits. I'd rather wreck those scissors than good knives. Sometimes I do have to get my big knife onto these things, but I prefer to give it a bit of a crack with these scissors first and see if I can kind of just get through, which is what I'm doing today. There we go. Okay, so I've got the 2 halves now, which I'm going to roast. But before we roast them, you've got to cover the skin with salt and leave that for sort of at least half an hour, and that draws any of the moisture out so that you get crispier skin. Now you do have to have them in fairly snugly. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that for about half an hour. Now with this second bird, which is slightly bigger than the first one, I've decided to piece it out. I'm going to take the breast off, the legs, and maybe I'm just going to use the wings in the broth. And then I can use the rest of the frame in a duck broth that I'm going to make. Actually, I'll take those legs off. Here's one leg. And that's the second leg. And now I'll get the breast off, which is just kind of follow the bone along really. I'm still getting better at doing this sort of thing, so you've just got to give it a go. And at the end of the day, what you leave on the frame, you will get back out in the duck broth. And that's one of the breasts. I like to sort of roast those up, and then they're really nice just to slice up, and you can have that cold in a salad or sort of warm as a roasted dish. And of course, the more you do all of this, the better you get. So if you're worried that you're leaving half the meat on, don't worry, because one day you'll be doing this perfectly. And second breast. I will remove the wings, but I am going to just include those in my duck broth. Okay, So that's my duck all jointed. Now I'm not going to be using these straight away, so I'm going to put them in the freezer. And to try and reduce plastic, I do wrap them up in baking paper and then put them into Ziploc bags, which can then be easily reused. So I'll just pop those in. Now you'll always think you remember what these are, but guaranteed you never do when you go to get them out. So just make sure you do note on these little packages what they are, so that when it comes to dragging them out of the freezer again, you know exactly what you're dealing with. And that's my duck ready for the freezer. Now the next thing to do to get the most out of our duck harvest is to get some broth going. So I've got the two heads, necks, skin from the necks, and the feet from the birds, and they're just going to go into our stock pot with some water, and I'm going to add in the wings, and then I might just break this frame up a little bit just to fit it in the pot really. This is where I need my scissors. And that can go in as well. And I'll add in a splash of apple cider vinegar. The vinegar just helps to get any of the minerals out of the bone and makes for a more nutritious bone broth. So we'll get that onto the stove. And I'll leave it on the stove for up to 48 hours. It's been about half an hour, 45 minutes, and the moisture is being released from the ducks. So I'm just getting a clean tea towel and I'm just going to dry them off a bit. And this is all just to help promote a crispy duck skin. Now something I forget to do before salting often is to just pierce the skin, and that helps the fat release, and then it kind of self-bastes during the cooking. And try not to get too far down into the meat, if at all possible. Then the duck goes into a cold oven and you put it on at between 140 and 150 just so that it really slowly cooks. Right, we're halfway through cooking and I've just given it a base with all that beautiful duck fat that's been released. Pop it back in for another half to 1 hour. There's quite a bit of meat on the breast, the wings and legs for the younger females don't give you as much as the males, but there's lots of that golden fat in there which I do strain out and reserve, and I'm going to enjoy this with a nice salad. Then I do reserve the bones and I'll add those to the stock pot, which has still got about 36 hours or longer to go. If I don't have stock going at the time when I've roasted up some duck, I'll just freeze the bones until I've got enough for a stock. Now that's our fat, which I'll put into the fridge, but all of these pan drippings have got great flavour. So what I'll do, I'll get some water into that, hot water, and try and get it off the bottom of the pan, and I'll add that to the bone broth as well. Now we're going to use up the livers. Now there's only two fairly small livers and they weigh about 40 grams. So I've got a recipe, but this works out at about 1/10 of the recipe. But I still don't mind making just small batches of this pate because it's so delicious. So I've got the liver, I've got some diced up red onion, some thyme, some of my garlic paste, salt, pepper, and that's some duck fat that I've rendered previously. And I just flavour it up with a little bit of brandy. The recipe that I'll link in the description calls for cognac. But I've got brandy that I've always had for like Christmas pudding making. So I'm going to use that. First up, we're going to fry up the livers. Okay, with sizzling oil, we're just going to pop in the livers and really just cook them till they're kind of just done. We're going to leave them fairly pink inside. So it's really quick. Then I'll add the onion, thyme and garlic and just really very gently and quickly fry that around on quite a low heat really. You don't want to burn the onion or the garlic. So I've added the brandy to this and we're just going to use the spice grinder because it's just a small amount of ingredients. So I'll add in this and add in a bit more of our duck fat. Now the recipe I'll link calls for lard, but I've got duck fat and they're duck livers, so it seems like just a good idea. Alright, so we've got all of that and we're just going to give that a whiz. But before we give it a whiz, we'll just remember to put in the salt and the pepper. I'm just seasoning to taste, a bit of a pinch of each. There you have it. It's all blended till it's smooth. And I'm just going to add it into these little espresso cups. And it looks like it'll just do the one little glass. Now, if you wanted to keep this for a while, you could just put on a layer of fat if you left a room. But I'm not going to. I'll be eating this fairly quickly with some homemade crackers. And that's a really delicious way to use up the livers. And after 2 days, I strained the duck broth before enjoying some as a soup with veg and a bit of lamb. Ducks! Ducks! The thing I love about khaki campbells, besides them laying lots of eggs, is that they come running when you call them. If they're off in the paddock, I can call them and they will come in and go to bed. The duck housing is something that built over time. If I started again, I would have a completely different enclosure for all the ducks. I find that I'm tied to putting the ducks to bed at night to protect from predators. The ducks are very suspicious of strangers and will often not come in if someone else attempts to tuck them in for the night. Well, I've just put the ducks away, and as usual I do a head count, and I came up 2 ducks short. Now, I let them out in the morning and everyone was there this morning, but that's the sort of thing that can happen. And I was out the back of the dam just having a look to see if there was evidence I could find, because you can often find a pile of feathers. And here is a fox coming back for more. So I have some ducks out tonight and I've wished them good luck. That's all you can do. If they're not going to go in, you can't really catch them. That's the thing. I think having an alternative large duck house with a large external run would not only enable me to go away easily, but I could also lock up the ducks for extended periods like when foxes are feeding their young. I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at my duck system here at Huttons Valley Permaculture. Chickens, in my opinion, are a lot easier, but ducks have a unique character and use, and I don't think things would be the same here without them. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and bye for now.